Hey friend, listen. I know the world is scary right now. Corruption, war, inflation, demographics, degeneracy, disease, unrest, hatred, and despair. We didn't come here to tell you how it is, but that it's going to get way better.
Got a good thing coming, and it's all I need. Everything I wanted, just wait and see.
Better by Bitcoin.
Happy
What's
Friday.
Yeah, Friday
Happy
show.
Friday.
Welcome to Better Buy Bitcoin. It won't surprise me if some other people hop on, but right now it's just JD and myself. JD, what's your X handle?
Cypherpunk Cine.
Cypherpunk
banners up. There we go.
And I'm just Anton Syme. I don't know.
It's just me.
Well, you know, so many people have NIMs, and I probably should have one at this point, but just using my name, Anton Syme. If you don't know anything about me, I'm a filmmaker. I am a director of photography. I was behind the movies What is a Woman recently, Am I Racist, and a few others. So I'm a Bitcoiner, but I'm also a filmmaker. JD, you also are in entertainment, commercials. Is it doxing us to say that we live in and around Hollywood?
Yeah, I think everybody knows we're in LA. I think we've doxed ourselves on that.
Yeah, we're coming at you from Southern California. Today, we're going to be talking about the death of paper currency. And specifically, there was something on my mind. You know, I was looking at physical currency. I was looking at a $100 bill. And I was thinking to myself, psychologically, this thing still feels valuable. It feels a little less valuable with the blue strip and the big face. And they've recently changed the design. And as much as they try to make this not happen, there is debasement even in paper currency. And the bills do start to feel cheaper to you as inflation devalues them. So if you hold a $100 bill from the 90s, has a little small face, Benjamin Franklin, it looks different, but it actually does feel a little bit more valuable to you. But going back to my original point, a $100 bill, a paper piece of currency with Benjamin Franklin's face on it, still feels valuable. You hold it, you're like $100. This is enough money to really do something. But when you compare what you could have bought with a $100 bill 20, 30 years ago, you could buy 3 times, 4 times as much quality products with that $100 bill as you can now. But we still think of it as valuable. And my belief is that the reason why it hasn't quite set in that the actual $100 bill has been devalued is because we're not really using $100 bills that much anymore. Almost all of our spending has gone digital. And so we're not physically holding money. So we're spending a lot more money. I go to the grocery store. I spend $300, $400 at the grocery store to buy a shopping cart full of groceries that only feeds my family for a few days. And whereas, you know, a few years ago, I could have taken $100 to the grocery store and bought 4 times the amount of groceries. So the money has absolutely been devalued, but because we're spending digitally, we don't even think about it. Like, JD, how much physical paper currency have you held in your life? Like, when is the last time you held a stack of bills?
It's actually why I got up. I have bills from all over the world, right? But that's different than what you're talking about.
It's different, but I want to get to that. I want to get to foreign currencies in this discussion.
All over the world. But it was funny actually opening this box and just kind of like seeing these bills from all over. Like these are from which ones are these from? These are some euro, or no, this is some, what are these ones for? This is Uzbekistan, and then this is a euro, and yeah, but like all these things, these are Russian, So there's like Russian currency here. Like there's just yeah, the answer to that, my wife and I have been very blessed to travel a lot, and we collect we have been collectors of currency for a long time. So I have a bin here of all the currency from everywhere we've been. And actually, like up here, I have a couple of Ugandan shillings. But the answer to your question is we still paid our babysitter last night in cash, right? But the thing that's interesting to me, and I think that's part of the idea here of like, the green faces of dead presidents, is like, how did we get here? How do we get to a point where exactly what you're talking about is like we're now at this point where the physical currency is being killed because they understand that it's going to help with what comes next. There's a reason during COVID, outside of them saying you needed to wear a mask everywhere, if you were paying attention, you saw at every single government establishment that took money, the DMV, the post office, these giant signs saying the coin shortage. And I was like, what the hell is the coin shortage? Right. And it's like, they're just literally propagandizing you into this understanding that we're going to a digital currency. I believe that they're trying to prep us for CBDC, and they still kind of are to a degree. But I think the bigger thing is, and I've talked about this on the pod, I worked at one point in time for one of the credit card companies with the previous player. Excuse me. And the reason they moved from the slide to the dip to the tap is because with each of those various motions, you spend more money. Like they understand that when you physically hand somebody from some bills, when you have to go in and you have to count these things out, and you have to be like, oh, I did this much, and you get that sound, and you get all that stuff. You have the smell of it, right? Like I opened that box, and I was like, money just smells the same all around the world because it's the same printers. Fun fact, there's more there too. But the big thing is like they understand that psychologically they take the pain away. And if they take the pain away, you're going to spend more money and you're going to be more amenable to things costing more because you're not changing the habit, right? Like you're still sliding a card or tapping a card or dipping a card, but the habit's not changing. When you have different bills, when you physically have to go in and change the bills, right? Like I think if people would think back in the last 10 years, the biggest currency change that happened that people know about was in India. They got rid of, I believe it was the 500 ruble note. And that was the equivalent of their 20, right? And there was a mass run to the bank. It was a 500 or 5,000. I can't remember. It was red.
Like a physical run to the bank.
Physical runs on the bank because people had these notes and they said, hey, after this time, we are not even going to accept these anymore. The government is just going to say these don't exist. And that was a giant, like, shock to people physically because they had to go do a thing, but it was a giant shock to people also because like, hey, I can't actually accept this because nobody's gonna actually like allow me to accept this. And so they're trying to train us, and they are training us by the story that we have to tell ourselves and that we have to tell about what is kind of going on right now at the physical with the physical currency. But yeah, anyways.
Yeah, pretty soon you won't even have to tap. You will just, and this already exists at Amazon stores, you'll just put things in your cart and walk out the door and be billed for it. Like, do you even look at prices anymore? I literally don't look at prices. And it's not because I'm so wealthy that it doesn't matter. It's just the prices are going to be whatever they're going to be. I go to the grocery store. I want the thing that I want. The prices are all over the place. We've had such inflation, and some of it was sort of localized inflation that was a little bit BS, like when eggs went up to $12 for a carton of eggs. And it's like, if I want eggs, I just got to pay $12. And then the next time you buy eggs and you don't even look at it and you'll get a receipt and you're like, eggs are $3.50 now? Like, what is the real price of egg? What even happened? So people have gotten out of the habit of even looking at the prices. And that's not a good thing. People used to go to the grocery store with a physical $100 bill, and they would be like, this is all the money that I have. I am going to buy groceries. I'm going to use coupons. I'm going to fit my groceries within this. Now people are like, I need to eat to survive. It's going to cost what it's going to cost. And I'm just going to put it on a credit card. And I'm just going to go into debt if I have to, because I have to eat to survive. People aren't even aware that they're suffering this right now, but they are. And we're all paying the consequences of everybody having this psychological stress on them, which is caused by fiat currency, by the taking away of physical currency, by the debasement, this whole thing that has led us all to being so bullish on Bitcoin, knowing that a Bitcoin standard would solve all of this, and why we're doing this podcast and telling other people about it, because Bitcoin literally solves this. And until the whole world figures this out, everybody is suffering the effects of inflation. And that sucks. I hate watching people suffer. I hate it.
Can you unpack a little bit? I got to jump 2 seconds to do one thing, but I would love you to unpack kind of for people this. I actually, where I want to go with it is the kind of like where you think your understanding of that these little pieces of paper had value came from. Like, try and think back to like as you kind of grew up and as you kind of saw stuff. Like, do you remember the moment when you're first like, because like even now, you know, my kids are like, I have money, I want money, I want money. It's like, oh, I have money, right? And it's like, you know, and I had, you know, one of my kids at one point in time like, hey, can you take this money that they took out of my, like, you know, just little change thing, but like I'm giving you this money. They're like, why? Oh, because I don't want you to work. You know, I want you to stay home more. I don't want you to work. And I'm like, God, man, that just like cuts deep. But like, you know, even now he's being conditioned, right, by these coins, by this stuff, that this is valuable. Oh, this is what I'm going to trade for this stuff. And so I'm like curious, like, can you unpack your kind of like story of how it kind of like started to become like valuable to you? Because I'm actually kind of curious. I think there's something interesting about this, like, you know, trying to actually just like unpack the psychological state of like, how did we get here?
Yeah, let's go. Do you remember when you were a kid and you had your first bicycle? For me, one of the best days of my life, my parents came home with, well, they didn't come home. They bought me a bicycle, but there was a knock at the door. This was on Christmas Eve. I opened the door. There, sitting there, was a black Huffy with gold handlebars. Later on in my life, as I grew out of that bike, my friends introduced me to the idea of brands, and I had saved money. Basically, my grandparents gave me a little bit of money for birthday, Christmas. So I'd saved money, and my friends were obsessed with GT bicycles, and I'd grown out of the other bicycle. So it came time to get a bicycle. So go to the bike shop, GTs and dynos were $500. I think maybe the GTs were a little more expensive, but I found this blue dyno nitro. I bought this bike with my own money for $500. If you were to jump forward today, that bike would cost the equivalent of around $1,500 to $2,000 for that same little BMX bike. And I paid for it with my own money. And it's this number in my head. $500 was an immense value. Okay, so glorious time in every kid's life when you have the freedom of riding your bike around. And a lot of us who are around 40 years old are thinking about what's called old school BMX or these vintage bicycles and stuff. Like, all this 90s nostalgia is in our head. I've been thinking a lot about it lately. Like, why are we so nostalgic about this stuff? Okay, those bicycles were made and manufactured in the USA. That's super cool. They were made out of chromoly steel or aluminum, which was very high grade aluminum. And I was looking the other day at what bicycles cost now. Now, you can go buy like a cheap Walmart bicycle that falls apart, and they're made in China, and you can buy them for possibly even cheaper than bikes were back then. Okay, so that's interesting. Manufacturing has gotten so efficient, and outsourcing things overseas has also gotten so efficient that it's brought costs down. But if you want to buy a really good bicycle, which, by the way, is not manufactured in the United States, it's also manufactured overseas, those bicycles are around $5,000. So you have this insane jump from this cheap Chinese-made garbage, which is, you know, $250, to what is a quality bicycle that's $5,000. It's actually more expensive than bicycles were when we were kids. What caused all this to happen, and how, in the process of all this happening, did it totally kill manufacturing in the United States? all of these things are interrelated. So to answer your question, the first time that I held on to value, I bought this thing that was super high quality, that had it was a high cost. I saved that money myself. Now, if a kid were to try to do the same thing, they literally could not have that same experience that I had. It doesn't exist anymore. And if they have to set their sights way higher if they want something of equivalent value. And all of this happened through this catastrophe of going off of the gold standard and of permanent inflation in fiat currency. And it has to have an end point, which I think is why all of us are so nostalgic. We realize that something was taken from us through this process. So I'm answering your question by bringing it all back to vintage bicycles, but you're muted.
Hilarious. It's interesting though, the like, you know, it's all about story, right? Everything's about story. You told yourself that this bike is valuable, and then you're like, oh, I gotta look at what are people trading? Like, what is a valuable thing I can trade for this valuable thing, right? And it's just it's funny because, and it goes to what we were talking about last week, like, you know, we're in an interesting place where the bottom of the pyramid, and I think we should just start using that as our referral link on the pod, is like,
Yeah, right.
you know, just say it's like the people with the day laborers, right?
Mhm.
But it's like the bottom of the pyramid are telling themselves stories to trade for something, and you know, that's the group of people that are, you know, going to be affected the most by all these things. But the whole point for the people at the top of the pyramid, who are the schemers, right, is for them to try and get the people at the bottom of the pyramid to fight over something worthless so they can stay on top of the pyramid, because they just want them fighting about things that are just, you know, nonsense, right? It's like, oh, what's your sports ball team, or what's your, you know, whatever it is. You know, they want to keep you in this rat race. Oh, I had to spend 85 years at the DMV to get my driver's license, whatever it is. They don't care about any of that stuff. What they care about is, at the end of the day, can they look at a spreadsheet and have it be predictable? Because people are, for better or for worse, predictable to a certain degree. You know, it's the whole thing like why you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, because people will panic if they're in a big enough group of people. But if you have one person by themselves, which is also why they, you know, don't like having, you know, individual heroes, right? Like, one person by themselves will statistically more often than not help in a situation where they can. Like, that's just, again, like Dan Ariely wrote a really great book called Predictably Irrational. Highly recommend it for any like stats nerds. But where I'm going with this is every group of people, whether it be a 4-year-old or, you know, a 10-year-old you, or, you know, a 30-year-old, a 20-year-old, an 80-year-old, or whatever it is, has these stories that they've told themselves that they're willing to trade some kind of value for something, right? Like, you know, in this case, as we started out, like the green faces of dead presidents, it's like they're trading these green faces of dead presidents, these coupons, for something that somebody else has like added value into. But the whole premise of the game is fudged, because the dead presidents and the currency that their face is on is not real. It's fake. And it's even more fake now with what we were talking about, where, you know, it's 100% abstract now. Like, it's moving to a 100% abstract place. I actually think it's a dangerous place for Bitcoin. That's a whole other topic. But I do think physical Bitcoin will become a thing. Like, Cassasius coins are one aspect of it. And I think that's not going to be the correct form for physical Bitcoin. But I do think we're going to get to a place where, you know, Bitcoin is $10 million a coin or whatever it is, and we're at homeostasis, and a sat is the same as a buck, right? And it's like, oh, it's like 50 sats, and people are just gonna like throw a 50 sat coin on the counter, and in some way, shape, or form, it's gonna be verified immediately, just because of the nature of how stuff is gonna go, and you can actually do quick transactions versus people being like, I'm gonna scan your QR code, dude. It's like, no, like that's not scalable. It's not fast. You know, it doesn't work in Italy when you're paying for your espresso, or it doesn't work, you know, in Uganda when you're trying to do something under the table. So, yeah, I'm rambling a little bit, but I wanted to land on your, like, you told yourself a story about something that was valuable, and you looked at your adults, you look at your elders, you're like, oh, cool, I can go do these things for you, and you'll give me these, you know, little penance to like save up. And at that point, yeah, it was like $500, and it was for something that was actually valuable, and now it's like $500, and you're just buying a piece of crap because just of the way that the bottom of the pyramid is broken, or rather, the people at the top broke the bottom for everybody else.
There was actual saving at that point. Do you remember saving money? That was a thing.
I remember the banks, man, the piggy banks, the glass banks or whatever. And it's just like, and this is the crayon one. That's why I was doing this motion. But like, it was like the Crayola crayon that you wanted to fill up. And then when you actually needed to take anywhere, your dad was mad because he stubbed his toe on it because it just got so damn heavy. Like those things. Yeah. It was just like, that was the thing. You're like, oh, I found this stuff in the couch cushion,
But kids are not saving money anymore. You can go to an ATM and you can get cash out and you can give it to your kid. But in general, we're not spending cash. So they're not going to be getting a lot of cash. I realize you said you paid your babysitter in cash. It still does exist. In the US, cash does exist. You can go spend it at most places. But as you know, there are many places, especially in LA, where literally you walk in and it says, we do not accept cash.
Yep.
I didn't even know that was legal for them to do. I guess it is, because there's tons of restaurants that I go to where they literally will not take cash for payment. You have to use a tap or a card or whatever. But when I was a kid, if I went and bought a pack of baseball cards, I got some change back. That change went in my piggy bank. You could save. And then at the end of that 6 months or whatever, where you wanted to buy the bicycle, you would have the money. Now with inflation, there's the risk that the thing you're saving for keeps getting further and further and further away from you. I'm experiencing that right now with saving for a house. I tried to save money for a house. Houses got so much more expensive that if you compared how much I could save compared to how expensive houses got over the last 5 years, the goal of getting a house got further away from me as I was saving money. It should be getting closer. You're saving money. You should be getting closer. But no, the inflation of assets was so much faster that by saving money and having not bought a house as quickly as you could, it ended up and this is true for a ton of people between the ages of 20 to 40, they will never own a home because inflation goes into assets first. So if they don't somehow buy a home, no matter how much they save, it just the goal gets further and further away from them. So for our generation, we still psychologically think that saving exists. Only it does exist now if you saved in Bitcoin. Thankfully, for us Bitcoiners, if you were even dollar cost averaging a little bit of your money into Bitcoin, the growth that you've seen over the last 10 years in Bitcoin far outpaced inflation. And thank God for that. Thank God for Bitcoin, as we say all the time. I did want to say one more thing about the coin shortage. That didn't exist, by the way. There was no coin shortage. They debased the coinage and they started making coins out of cheaper material. The truth of what happened is that inflation ran so hot that it cost more money to mint coins than the coins were worth.
Yep. It was like 3 cents for a penny or something like that, or something stupid.
Yeah. It costs more money for the government to make a penny than the penny is worth. And so they keep trying to find new metals, and you can do this yourself. Go get a 1982 penny and just flip it and get a new penny. The 1982 penny will go zing, and the 1999 or anything after 1983 will go thunk. Like you can hear the debasement in the coins.
Yep. Yeah, it's excuse me, it blows my mind how unfortunately predictable people are, though. And this actually goes to the I really want to read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. I know it's like the playbook for all politicians. And so I do think there's like a lot of value to read it. And I'd love to read anything by Che Guevara as well. And I know I'm saying that not because I'm a communist. I'm saying that because I think there's actually a lot of really interesting and powerful ways to use propaganda. And I do think we need to use them more. That's where the whole Cypherpunk Cinema handle came from as Bitcoiners. Because at the end of the day, I have a firm belief right now this whole conflict going on with Knots and Core is a story war. But I think they're arguing about the wrong thing. Bitcoin Mechanic at one point in time said this on one of his earlier like episodes when he was kind of like talking about the topic, but like the whole point is like Bitcoin is money or it is a database. It cannot be both. Period.
Yeah.
Like it is money, which money can be a store of value, right? And money can be a medium of exchange. Like we don't have to argue it's like a store of value. No, like it's money. Like if I have money right here, like this money in this container is a store of value, right? It's going down in value, but this is a store of value technically, or theoretically, or it is a medium of exchange if I want to hand it to somebody. But the point is the money aspect of Bitcoin is so important because you need to craft your storytelling for the lowest common denominator. You have to talk to the lowest common denominator. You have to be able to articulate your points to the lowest common denominator. And if you are truly a believer in Bitcoin and what it's going to do, you do actually think it's going to do what Hal Finney thought, which is take over, even 1% of a $300 trillion, global asset cap. That's going to double, triple, and maybe quadruple, by the way, before Bitcoin is done. That was $300 trillion, in 2009, 2010, when Bitcoin was initially created. So like 300 trillion is not a lot based on where we are now. And I think the last number I saw was like 712 trillion is like the actual market cap of the global market right now. But if you do believe that everyone is going to be forced through the door like cattle at some point in time, they're going to come through that door. You're right. But they're going to come through it in one of two ways. They're going to come through feeling forced. And if they're feeling forced, they're going to be mad and they're going to be angry. And they're going to feel like at the end of the day, they were robbed in some way, shape, or form by people who were Bitcoiners and the people who like paved the way, in the same way, the Chinese were mad at the models and the teachers and the business people and everybody else like that, which caused the Chinese Revolution, which is why Taiwan was created, right? Like everybody went through the door. It's the same thing as what happened with the communism in Pol Pot's Cambodia. Everybody was mad at the, affluent people. And the story that was told was, oh, you guys were oppressed by this group of people. That is the story that was told. The only way to not have that happen again and not have every single Bitcoiner $5 wrench attacked, whether you have, 0.0001 of a Bitcoin or a full Bitcoin or more, is if everybody has a baseline understanding of what Bitcoin is. And that is why I think this war is actually so important, because this war is for 2140. This war is not for the year, 2025 or even 2030, right? This is a war for the year 2140, because if, for the same reason that the story of Christ compels you, I would say, more than the power of Christ compels you for most people, is the story of Bitcoin will compel you, and it will compel you to come through that door angry or come through that door with a sigh and being like, oh, what else is on? Like, that's the point. And that is actually, I think, the most important point that people like Jameson Lopp and Shinobi and Portland Huddle and other people are missing. It's like, nobody freaking cares about your 80 kilobytes or your 1,000 or your 80 bytes or your 1,000 byte op return. Nobody legitimately cares. And the tails of that bell curve are the only people who actually care about your inscriptions or anything else like that. 99.72% or whatever it is in the middle of the bell curve of people are not going to give a flying flip about your inscriptions or your token or whatever it is. They just want to know what is and how can I use it. Bitcoin is money and you can buy your coffee with it. Fantastic. I'm happy you're here. This is great. Can I have a beer and can you turn on the Cowboys? That's what we need to actually be talking about, because at the end of the day, all the other stuff will be figured out by the tails, right? The tails of people who just love the technicals. They love the instrumentation of it. If you're Wall Street or whatever it is, like all of that will be figured out. Those people will do it themselves. Why? Because they're highly motivated. The 99% of people, though, are not. And they need to be spoon-fed what to do. And it's unfortunate, but it's the truth, which is why you can have Predictably Irrational and Dan Ariely and, Robert Cialdini and all these old thinkers and philosophers and marketers be able to sell you a product like an iPhone habitually and have planned obsolescence be a thing habitually. Everyone does it. Samsung does it. Google does it. Every single company does planned obsolescence. Why? Because it works, because it's easy, because you can market people into a new product. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I think it's so important to get the Bitcoin story right, because there is no planned obsolescence. This is it, guys. And if we screw it up, back to square one, which is the fiat co-opting that we have at the current moment in time.
Bitcoin has an incredible story. You have the story of Satoshi creating Bitcoin and everything that went into it. There was a time period from about 2008 to around 2013 where there was so much drama involved with the creation of Bitcoin that you could make an incredible movie about Satoshi creating Bitcoin. Had Satoshi not created Bitcoin, the need for something like Bitcoin would still exist also. So you have the story, you have the actual story of Bitcoin, and then you have the story of what happened to our world, the corruption of the monetary systems that we had. That is also a story. Right now, you have people like Luke Dasher and Bitcoin Mechanic. They are engineers, and I'm thankful for them because they are actually working on the nuts and bolts of Bitcoin, things that I don't even understand. They're not good storytellers. I don't think that they would be offended hearing that. I'm pretty sure that they're aware that they are not good storytellers. So there is a need for people like you and I. We're filmmakers, we're writers, we're commercial producers. And I know that there are other people, especially in our circle, on the Better by Bitcoin podcast. Pretty much everybody who is in our circle, we all live in LA. We've all worked in Hollywood. Some of us are in the actual film industry, and so we're set up. We're good people to tell the story of Bitcoin, and there is a need for more storytellers to tell Bitcoin specific stories that will help so many people, because when you're reaching out to the lowest common denominator, all of this engineering speak, it says nothing to them. It doesn't move them at all.
Yep.
These people are suffering because of all the things that we're talking about. They need the help of Bitcoin, and they need this story to be told to them in a way that they can understand, which is what we're trying to do.
Yep. And which is also the reason why politicians tell stories, right? There's a reason they go and find that fringe analogy. There's a reason they go and talk about that mom that has cancer. There's a reason they go and talk about that little girl, who had terrible things happen to her, or whatever it is, right? The first 2 years of my degree were in journalism. And the first thing I was taught in my first journalism class was oddity is what you look for. And if it bleeds, it leads. Period. Like, that's what they teach you in journalism school, is if it bleeds, it leads. Because at the end of the day, and I remember the description the professor gave. She's like, on this, and Judge Ely was the name of the street, but it's like, on this street over here, if there is a parade that was happening, on the 4th of July, and I'll probably get a story, whatever. But if there's a parade that happened, on a random Tuesday, where somebody just went down and they just had like a mass slaughter of people, or whatever it is. And I'm being a little over the top with it, but it's like, it would be national news, because on the 4th of July, everybody's going to do a parade down the big main street of whatever city and town you're in. But if it's got something unique and different about it, then that's what people are going to talk about. People like oddity. That's one of the things that the human condition is all about. Even you go back to the story of Cain and Abel, where Cain killed his brother Abel, and Cain was the shepherd, or rather, Cain was the farmer and Abel was the shepherd, right? I always forget, but I believe it was the farmer who was killed, or rather, the shepherd who was killed. Regardless, the point is this: the story does matter, and I do need to actually go.
We need a producer.
We need a producer. We need to do a little more prep, but I think the big piece here though is, Cain basically said to God, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And that was the story. He's like, I don't need to, tell you anything else like that. It's like, God already knew the story, but he's like, am I my brother's keeper? And the whole point there is, it's like, the story we tell ourselves is how we live our lives. And so Cain told himself this story that, I don't need to answer to you, God, because I'm not my brother's keeper, right? And so it's like the stories we tell ourselves are the most important thing. And that's actually what America got right. America got right. Hey, what is our number one export? Entertainment, storytelling. And so that is why we are the greatest nation in the world, because we've told everybody that. And we've told people that we're the land of opportunity. We've marketed it that way. And that's actually why it's important to maintain that, and actually why it's so important for Bitcoin for us to do that, because we need to have an understanding of what the hell it is we're selling. And people need to know what they're getting. Oh, you're getting money? Sweet. Cool. What else is on?
And it's why English is the lingua franca of the entire world, because Hollywood exported these stories to the world. It's incredible. I mean, for us, we are very fortunate to speak English as our mother tongue, because we can literally communicate with anyone in the world. So we have a massive leg up. Yeah, we need to tell better stories. So to all of you writers, filmmakers, artists, if you're also Bitcoiners, tell good stories that tell the Bitcoin story, and it's going to help a lot of people. There was something that you mentioned in there. Oh man, I totally lost what it was. Everything else?
I got to run and do one more thing real quick, which is frustrating, but I do have one more question to kind of actually go on. That is like, the whole point with Cypherpunk Cinema was to come in and start telling like the story of Satoshi and do it a bunch of different ways. And I'm still trying to do that. And actually AI is fantastic for that, because a lot of these things are just expensive, right? And I think that's one of the things is, from a Bitcoin perspective, it's, coming in late and not having a lot of Bitcoin. Where am I going with this? I'll land the plane really quickly. You get back to this tail analogy, right? Is you have this group of people that have a lot of Bitcoin that sit at the top of the Bitcoin pyramid. We're going to use the philosophical Bitcoin pyramid. But they need to get an understanding of what they're trying to do. And I think that's the other part too, with storytelling and everything. Like everything is story. Like you tell yourself you get up at a certain time in the morning and you go work out, or you don't work out, because of the story that you tell yourself. And so I think the thing that's going to be the most interesting aspect of the Bitcoin store war and the story in general is going to be the story people start to tell themselves and why about whatever it is Bitcoin related that they're doing. Because if you tell yourselves I'm saving for my kids' kids or my kids' kids' kids, it's actually going to change how you parent your kids. Because there's, in a couple pods ago, we talked about how generational wealth is basically lost all the way up until the 5th generation. Statistically, like every generation will just drop the ball. But if you can plan a 5-generation contingency plan and basically be planning out for your kids, right? So you have let's just take that, from a simple perspective. If you're looking at, 10 generations, 500 years, so that's 250 years. So plan out 250 years from your lifetime. Once you get to that 5th generation, there's an 84% chance that next generation will maintain your wealth. But, the idiot force they have to go through to get there is the big problem. And so it's like there's a chance that every generation up to the 5th is going to drop the ball. But if you're thinking about 5 generations from now, you're going to actually plan differently. You're going to coach differently. You're going to think differently. You're going to do things differently. And I think that's the thing that's the most important right now. That's kind of like being missed in the core camp. Is like the core camp right now is they're talking about, miners right now are going to want high fees. And it's like, sure, everybody want to get paid more for their stuff. But it's like, but what are miners going to want in 100 years? In 100 years, miners are going to want a really, really clean, simple, and I don't know, right? Like, I actually don't care about the technicals, and I don't even want to go into it for this particular reason. In 100 years, miners are going to want Bitcoin to be money. That's it. They are not going to care. They just want Bitcoin to survive. So 100 years from now, they want Bitcoin to survive. And the technicals will absolutely change in 100 years. I can guarantee you they're going to change. And I can guarantee you nobody who's listening to this, and myself and yourself, we have no idea what Bitcoin's going to look like. But if Bitcoin is money, that's all that matters. That's all that matters. And whatever money is 100 years from now, that's the point. That's the thing. The medium of exchange, the value. That's the story that needs to be told right now. That's the story we need to win. Because if we lose that, then who cares? Who legitimately cares? Who cares that MicroStrategy is going to own 1 million Bitcoin by the end of next year? Who cares? Legitimately is not going to matter because it's going to be worthless. It's not going to have a story of value behind it. And so diatribe over, but that's, I think, the thing that's the most important in my mind is like, we got to get that right. And I think we're missing the mark at the current moment in time.
Satoshi couldn't have fully predicted where we would be right now with Bitcoin being worth what it's worth and being so distributed. I mean, it is one of the greatest assets of all the assets to own currently. It has one of the biggest market caps of anything that you could compare it to, like a stock or real estate or gold and all these things. It's getting up there. But when Satoshi created Bitcoin, he created it for multiple generations. I think that at the current mining schedule in 2140, the last of the 21 million Bitcoin will have been mined. So Bitcoin, as it was created to operate in the way that it's operating now for over 100 years. So he was thinking that far ahead. Whereas in this current system that we're in, people take essentially mortgages, whether it's a mortgage on a big commercial building or your house or whatever. You take a 30-year mortgage so that you can have that asset, or so that you can live in your house for that 30 years. People are looking at assets more like they're renting them than owning them.
Yep.
So as long as a building can last that 30 years and provide cash flow to a business, then all they needed is for that 30 years, because the loan is a 30-year loan. If the thing literally falls over after 30 years, it doesn't matter. The loan's paid off, they got their cash flow, and that's it. That is not the way that anything should operate. We should be building things that last for hundreds of years, planning for multiple generations. But this thing that fiat has done to us, talking about all the suffering that it's caused, is it's made people very, very short-sighted. They don't make products that last. They don't make buildings that last. They're thinking in like, what can I do right now to make enough money so that I can buy the things that I want, because the prices are going to be higher later. So I just need it. I need to earn money right now and spend it right now, and earn money right now and spend it right now. And it's exhausting. And I think it's freaked out our generation, because our generation is thinking about retirement. And, you know, when we were younger, we would have thought, oh, if I have $1 million one day, I'm going to live like a king. Now our generation is thinking, even if I had $1 million in my bank account right now and something happened to my health and I didn't have the physical ability to work, that money's going to run out so fast and I'm going to be destitute. And so there's this existential dread that we're all feeling that fiat has caused. But Bitcoiners in general are tending to think, okay, Bitcoin is this thing that isn't going to even stop being mined until 2140. I won't be alive in 2140. So I'm holding on to an asset that is going to outlive me. So how do I think for my future generation? And the government can't just come in and take it. They can't seize it. They can't estate tax my Bitcoin. My Bitcoin is mine. I have it. And there's lots of different ways to hold in custody your own Bitcoin. And it's kind of like, I remember listening to Robert Kiyosaki talking about gold, and somebody asked him, well, where am I going to store the gold? And he's like, if you own the gold, you're going to figure out how to store it. Yep. And that same thing is true for Bitcoin. If you hold a tremendous amount of value that you're seeing going up, 10x, 100x over the time you hold it, you're going to figure out how to hold that value. You're going to figure out how to secure it and how to store it. And that is super empowering.
Yep. Yeah, I think the most interesting thing about the white paper, outside of the technical aspects of it, is the story that it tells. And the story that it tells with what you were just talking about, 2140, this was built to be a multi-generational currency, right? At least 2 to 3 generations is kind of what Satoshi was thinking, maybe even 4, depending on how you want to break down 2140. Do you look at that as 4 generations or 5 generations? But he was writing this in such a way that we need to be looking 4 generations out. We need to be looking ahead of us, because at the end of the day, the road is going to be bumpy, the road is going to be hard. And I think that's actually that's one of the things that I really do appreciate about Luke from a thinking perspective, is he really does try to go back to the fundamental, long-term thinking of it. A little crass in terms of his approach, but it's not wrong. And I think that's actually what you need. You need people breaking down the fundamentals of it for the long term. He's doing on the technical side, and I think that's the thing that we as storytellers need to come in and do it, is on the storytelling side. Because and I've said this over and over again, my mom doesn't care about Michael Saylor, my mom doesn't care about Robert Breedlove, outside of the fact that he's nice to look at. Kudos to you, Robert. I would love one day to look as good inside of a barrel just with my head sticking out. But the goal is legitimately, how do we tell stories that are going to move people? And we don't even need to move them into buying Bitcoin. Like, I think that's the big thing that, is missed a lot of times on the Bitcoin side. Is people like, oh, I need to orange pill somebody. I need to make them buy Bitcoin. It's like, no, you don't. You just need them to understand that Bitcoin is valuable. That's it. You just need them to know that Bitcoin is money. And if they want to come back to you and they want to ask you another questions and they want to do whatever, fantastic. But outside of that, they just need to know what the elevator one floor answer is when somebody says, have you heard of Bitcoin? What is that? And they just need to say money. And if they say money, you've won. Because money has so many things tied to it: freedom, power, empowerment, weapon. Like, you can use this as a cajole, you can use this as a carrot. Like, it doesn't really matter what it is. Like, money has, so many different dichotomies and aspects to it. And I think the thing that's the most, I listened to 38 Letters from John D. Rockefeller to His Son, one of the best books I've read in a long time. But what's fascinating about it is he talks about the verse in the Bible that's always misquoted, which is money is the root of all evil. And it's not money is the root of all evil. It's the love of money is the root of all evil. And I actually think that's what the core people are getting wrong right now. Is what they're getting wrong is they have, removed, they have filtered out in their brains, to use the whole Luke Dasher argument, the beginning of the argument, which is the love of money is the problem here, right? Because if you are a business and you are focused wholly on the love of money, wholly on the love of getting more fees, wholly on the love of a little bit more, you're not actually going to service your customers well. You're not actually going to do what you need to do to succeed in the long run. And so you're going to bring about your own demise, which is the whole point of that verse in the Bible. Is like, at the end of the day, if you love money, you will bring out your own demise. Money in and of itself is just a thing. Bitcoin in and of itself is just a thing. It is a database. Yes, I get that. Fundamentally, it is, to a degree, a database, right? Like, blockchain is a different type of database technology, if you want to break it down that way. But fundamentally, it is a different thing because it was created to do something different. It was created to be a ledger over a long time, 140 years at least, to store things into the future and to, create and understand value for this digital age, which is a fantastic thing to find out in the sovereign individual. So I don't have anything funny to say after that. I think if I found something funny, I can make the point land better. But
you said something earlier that Bitcoin is going to become physical, and I completely agree. It's fascinating to me that we didn't do this, but we created the greatest digital money to ever exist. And yet it also manifests itself in these physical forms. Personally, my favorite physical form currently are the stuff that NVK is making with like CoinKite cold cards and I think Q4, is that what it's called? The Q or
the Q,
what's the other one? The Q.
It's the Q, and then the Mark II, the original like cold card, and then there's these guys, the open dimes.
The open dimes.
Although I love these things, but this is like the open dime carrier thing, and I've had it. And NVK, this is not a knock on you guys, but like legit, just these things being like knocked around. Now it could be the fact that I have them knocking around in here with a USB stick thing, because nobody has a regular USB thing.
Yeah, it's
but
old
none of
USB.
these read. Well, none of these read now, and I'm like, sweet. So if I were to
have one of these to make it work now, and who knows what the future. But Bitcoin is physical. That's something that people who are not in Bitcoin can't understand. And so there's this argument. I'm just going to break it down real quick, because I am regarded, and for other
Highly
people
regarded.
who cannot understand, I'm going to break it down. According to my understanding, people are worried that Bitcoin is going to die. And so people are like, why would I put my life savings into this thing? You're telling me there's an argument happening with the people who run Bitcoin. What if they get it wrong and Bitcoin dies? I'm assuring people that Bitcoin is not going to die. This thing is not going to kill Bitcoin, even though Luke Dasher says that this is an existential threat, and if we get this wrong, Bitcoin will die. Zach asked us to explain it to him, explain like I'm 5. And my explanation was that Luke is talking about Bitcoin in 100 years. And we should be talking about Bitcoin in 100 years. But he's not doing a good job of explaining that. The argument still stands because we need to be talking about Bitcoin for multiple future generations. But he's not talking about a thing that is going to kill Bitcoin right now. We are fighting to set up Bitcoin for success that far outlives us. So there's a debate going on right now. To run Bitcoin, you have to run what is called a Bitcoin node. That when a Bitcoin transaction goes out and gets broadcast all around the world, it pings around to all of these different computers that people have built that hold a copy of every Bitcoin transaction that has ever existed. And as soon as it writes on to 2 of those, it's basically written in stone. But specifically, once it writes on to 6 of them, it can never, you could use all the compute power that has ever existed running with nuclear power plants, running whatever. It's never going to be able to be erased. It's there forever. So some people want to create software that allows you to put all sorts of things onto the Bitcoin ledger, not just money transactions, but it's all data. You could put little movies, you could put JPEGs, you could put anything that is in a digital form onto the blockchain. But Bitcoin is money. Why do we want JPEGs and why do we want movies? And people can put all kinds of weird stuff, images that you don't want on your computer. And if your computer is running a node and somebody puts something explicit on there, now you have something explicit on your computer. And so it makes everybody like criminally liable for anybody who slips anything in. So that is what is going on. And Luke and Mechanic are fighting to keep that stuff off the blockchain from a ideological, philosophical standpoint of they don't want explicit material on their computers because it is morally wrong to have that stuff. But it also creates a problem of making too much data on Bitcoin. And Bitcoin does not need this added data because Bitcoin is money. It is the money. It is the greatest money that we've ever had. And so we need to fight to keep it pure. And so that is the sort of breakdown of this argument. But that's all to say, Bitcoin's not going anywhere. Bitcoin is not getting destroyed. And we are fighting to make it as pure as possible because it already is the purest money.
I think I agree with everything you said. Save one thing. I think I think the risk is real, and I think actually if we don't get it right now, it will be the demise, which I think is Luke's point. Because again, it's like Bitcoin.
I'm trying to be positive. We're past the 30-minute mark.
That's true. You got to be positive, but it's the positive take on this though is Bitcoin is an oil tanker, right? It's an oil tanker that's getting up to speed. It always was an oil tanker. It was created as an oil tanker. I think the best way to think about this is like, the Federal Reserve is an oil tanker, right? And the Federal Reserve as an oil tanker is running aground right now. It is legitimately heading at full speed. And then they just keep going down into the boiler room and pouring more money and pouring more effort into making this thing go faster. And it's going to hyperinflate and it's going to nuclear bomb itself into an iceberg. That's what's going to happen. Bitcoin is fashioned after a similar thing, right? A currency, but it's an oil tanker that was designed to go forever, in a forward direction, just like the Federal Reserve. But the difference is now, we have people like Luke and Mechanic and, others, and even Adam Back came out today and he was kind of like saying Bitcoin is money and kind of making the similar argument is like, we need to be thinking about, 1 degree right now, or even 4 degrees right now of a change in the network, which is what everybody's saying is like, oh, it's only 4 degrees. It's only 4%. It's only whatever. It's like, yeah, but you're not thinking 100 years from now. 4 degrees 100 years from now is thousands and thousands and thousands of miles off the mark.
Puts you out of our solar system.
You're not even playing the same game anymore, right? Not the same solar system, none of that stuff. And so I think that's why it's so important. And I think that's why, it needs to get to this like war type situation again, because, as a storyteller, I totally agree. The reason we're in this quagmire of the United States right now, and I'm talking about left and right, like I don't care if you're red or blue. The reason the United States has become such a political quagmire right now is because we have allowed it to happen. And how did we allow it to happen? We allowed them to lie to us, and we believed the story they told us. That's it. And there were simple things we could have done, like term limits, which great men saw. George Washington, right? Like there are things that great men in the past saw, but people just didn't heed them for whatever reason. And so that's why we are where we are. Is, we had the bailout in 2008 by Obama. We had Trump just printing money like it's going out of style right now. And then his tariffs, like, I don't care who's in office right now, be it Trump or Biden. Like, I think all the Bitcoiners kind of saw that this plane was coming in for a really rough landing. And so I think we're probably in a better situation right now for the short term. But I think regardless of who's in office, red or blue, in the long term, like this plane does not land. Like the only way that this plane lands is it goes into the stratosphere and it keeps like flying up until it hits another planet. And at that point, it's probably Elon shooting it off to Mars, because that's the only way the fiat number goes, is up. And so, yeah, that's a rosy thought, right? We don't have to worry about the Federal Reserve anymore because we're on Mars.
Oh man. Yeah, you're totally right. You're totally right. It is an existential threat. I personally believe that Bitcoin is a good and moral money, and that good is going to win out over evil, but it still is a battle to be fought. It's just so far beyond my understanding. I wish that I was more technical. So, what we can do is we can keep telling the good Bitcoin story and supporting, if we can understand who the good actors are and who the bad actors are, we can do our best to support the good ones and essentially destroy the bad ones with storytelling. And storytelling is super powerful. And I'm not talking about, by the way, I'm not talking about documentaries. I'm talking about stories.
Narrative.
Totally narrative is the most powerful motivating force in existence for the human mind. Narrative.
Yep, I totally agree. And actually, I think one thing that's interesting is if people would disagree with that sentiment, try and hypnotize yourself. Try and sit down. Simon Sinek has a good piece on this, but the human mind is not possible of comprehending negatives. And so what I mean by that is, don't think of an elephant, is the whole thing he does. It's like, what are you thinking about right now? You're thinking of an elephant, because the human mind is not capable of ignoring these abstracts that you talk about. By the same token, it can't understand extreme abstracts. Like it can't understand exponentials, because exponentials, the only way you can understand an exponential is to stand in the middle of a nuclear bomb. And you will understand what exponential expansion feels like for a fraction of a second. But after that, it's not going to matter, because your experience has now been vaporized. And so the whole point about the human mind and the value of the human mind and the value of human understanding is the now. And is this story that you tell it, and the story, what I call your internal tape, that you tell yourself. And so, yeah, the narrative story you tell yourself, you have an internal tape. If you're listening to this, whatever story you're telling yourself is the truth. As Henry Ford said, if you think you can, you're right. If you think you can't, you're right. And the reason that's true is because you have told yourself the end of that story. I can't do this. I'm fat. I can't do this. I'm slow. I can't do this. I'm ugly. I can't do this. I'm weak. Whatever it is. I'm going to call myself a fair looking fella. But I was able to get married and, do all the things that I need to do. I'm a mildly intelligent individual, and I was able to, to find ways to figure it out. You can always do it. And I would say, don't speak to yourself in that language though. You're going to figure it out. Go do it. Go succeed. Go make it happen. Go do 5 push-ups. Go do those things that you want to do. Why? Because the only person stopping you is you. You can do it. Go do it. And that comes back to Bitcoin, is like, we can tell the story that Bitcoin is money. Why? Because it matters. And the way we need to do it, though, is in a narrative format. I think documentaries are great, but documentaries are just a way to put skin on statistics. And at the end of the day, nobody really cares about statistics. Why? Because they're all fake.
You've got those pretty hazel blue eyes.
Happens, man. Happens.
Sorry, did I make it weird?
No, it's fine. My mom is going to love that. So thanks, Mom. That one's for you, Mom.
Yeah, man. I just want to encourage people that life gets better on a Bitcoin standard. It gets better for you personally. And if you're looking around the world where you are, like if you're driving around your city and you're seeing these horrible problems, you're seeing trash on the street, seeing homelessness and despair. All those things get fixed as soon as the money gets fixed, and Bitcoin is the fix for the money. So to keep that positive mindset, it is important. The positive mindset is how you essentially hypnotize yourself into the mentality that you want to have, which is the mentality of possibility and positivity. And Bitcoin will immensely help you to realize that positivity because you have money that hasn't been corrupted by this evil force of inflation. I was thinking today, I tweeted this out, that that there will be mental institutions on a Bitcoin standard. I was thinking about this because there's a homeless guy in my neighborhood. I want to feel bad for him because he has an IQ of about 60, but he stabbed 2 women in the face. The first time he stabbed a woman in the face, he didn't go to jail. So a year later, he stabbed a woman in the eye. Terrible. And he went to jail. Well, the other day, I think it was yesterday, I was driving, I look over and I see him standing back in his same spot. He hasn't been in my neighborhood in 2 or 3 years. I almost didn't recognize him because he looked so much better. He looked healthier. He got healthier in prison.
Mm-hmm.
Prison's a terrible place. It's not a good place, and our prisons aren't even run well. But his life in prison was better than his life on the street. I'm telling you, this guy, before he went to prison, was the dirtiest human being I have ever seen in my life. He didn't change his clothes for at least 7 years because I was living in the neighborhood for 7 years, and I literally saw him in the exact same outfit, covered in filth, for 7 straight years. He never changed his clothes or took a shower. And he came back from jail. He looked healthy. He had a decent amount of weight on him. He was clean. I guarantee he's going to get dirty again. But currently, under our fiat standard, society is falling apart. The only thing that's keeping it from falling apart is our own will to not want it have it fall apart. Under hard money, we will take care of people because we will be incentivized to make everything look and feel as good as possible because there's nobody else who's going to do it for us. Right now, everybody thinks that the government is going to take care of people. They think that it's more compassionate to let people sleep on the street. That is not compassion. It's neglect. Yeah. Everybody's neglecting it because they're too busy trying to hold their life together as inflation is trying to take everything away from them. All this stuff is getting fixed on a Bitcoin standard. So I don't know how long that's going to take, but I feel really positive about it personally.
Yep. It's interesting even thinking about this too. And I know we can do last thoughts after this, but it's funny. The people who have done the most damage and helped the most in terms of I'm going to say the kind of the story of our nation have been storytellers. And I'll give 2 examples. And this will kind of be my last thing. And this also is like, why is the Bitcoin story so important? When JFK painted the picture of the value of going to the moon and winning the space race, he united a nation in a way that had never been seen before since World War II. When Ronald Reagan told the story of the tragedy of our mental institutions, and he closed all of those institutions and cast those people like that homeless guy you have onto the street, he did more harm to the next several generations in this generation that's going right now and ruined places like San Francisco because he told a story that was unfortunately a lie. And he told that story because people wanted to make money. And the people knew that they could make money through the Cantillon effect, which is, something you should look up, but it's all based on the story of a lie. The value of story is if you have a really, really good story that has a lot of momentum behind it, it can change the face of history forever. Jesus is a perfect example. And in my mind, I think the next great story beside Jesus for humanity will be and is the story of Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree. I fully agree. Well, hey, if you've stuck with us, thank you for listening. Another episode of Better by Bitcoin in the can. And yeah, that's it for us. Thanks.
Yeah. And if you have any thoughts about I don't like your face, like that, we can't help with those. But if you're like, hey, it'd be cool if you guys try to do this, try to do that. Like we're gonna try now once we get into the next episodes 41, which is where we're at now, through 100, are all about experimenting and trying to find the format. The first 40 episodes are about like, hey, getting comfortable in front of the camera, making the stuff work, and kind of talking and starting to like figure stuff out on the fly. But now we're gonna start trying to actually like plan things out a little bit more. So if you have any ideas or thoughts, drop them in the comments. Subscribe, share. We really do appreciate all of it, and we want to try and give people something interesting. So we're trying to figure out what that is, but we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I want to, if you're listening to us right now and you've listened to any of our episodes or watched our shorts on YouTube, or you subscribe to us on X, drop us a note, put a comment on YouTube, or reply to us on X, reply to Anton Syme or Cypherpunk Cine. We would love to hear from you. And if you have ideas for our show, I kind of even want to, even if you have criticism, bring it on. Let's hear it. But Thank you for watching.
Cheers, y'all. Oh, I pushed the
I
wrong
need to
button.
leave.
No, I just pushed the wrong button. Thanks, y'all. Technical difficulties. Apparently, we need 40 more episodes to figure this out.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to Better by Bitcoin. Bitcoin makes everything better. Like, subscribe, and follow us on X at BetterBYBTC, YouTube at BetterBYBitcoin. Not financial advice, mathematical certainty.